Um, Everybody, and welcome back to the Telivy MSP podcast. Very excited to introduce our guest here today. Sal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Sal Kohgadai with an organization called Fruth Group. We're an MSP in Phoenix, Arizona. And thank you, Jeremy, for having me.
Absolutely. And hey, everybody, for those who don't know, I'm Jeremy, head of partnership with Telivy, and we're an automated cybersecurity risk assessment platform for over 100 MSPs. MSPs like Halt Data Solutions, Trident Networks, and Level 5 Management use Telivy to close deals with risk assessments, gain 3x in revenue in new clients, and convert website traffic to sales calls with a homepage risk assessment widget, and reduce risk assessments that take 7 to 8 days manually to under 5 hours automated with Telivy. All right, so Sal, let's dive right into it. Can you tell us a little bit more about Fruth Group?
Absolutely. So Fruth Group is a managed service provider, meaning that we work specifically with companies, corporate companies. We work in verticals such as schools, as well as manufacturing and some finance organizations. And we provide their IT, and we do the IT security as well. So we're an MSP and an MSSP.
Got it. And we'd love to start by learning a little bit more about the education sector that you work with. Do you work with K-12? Do you work with university colleges or another form of education?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work with K to 12,
Mhm.
and we work with school districts as well as charter schools. I would say those are the three big ones within the schools. And we work with them to really stand up their network, to improve their network. We have our network analysts and network engineering team where we go in and try to understand kind of how they use their system and improve upon that. I don't know if you knew that, but for state testing, every student actually has to take their test online now.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody needs a computer and everybody needs a good network, right? So that becomes, the networking side of it, whether that's Wi-Fi or wired network, becomes really important. So we're the ones that typically make sure they have a good network, and we actually are on site on testing days too. But all of the work that entails that, right? So we work with the schools. Typically, there's some government funding that they receive as well. So we work directly with them to ensure they get their network equipment. We do all of the management of their network as well, so all the monitoring and so forth, and make sure they're well protected, right?
Interesting. I'd love to learn a little bit more. You mentioned the standardized exams that are taken digitally now, right? Not with
Yeah,
how I used to do with the number of two pencils.
right.
And curious, what kind of problems or unique, problems does that create? What are the problems that you have to solve in that space? And I also wanted to learn a little bit more about how the problems in the landscape changed during COVID, at the beginning, middle, and end of that too. And as we all know, everybody had to do school from home.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, so for a school, for an organization to, some of the challenges that I should say that we see is really around, what happens when you've got, it's a nice day, right? And the teacher says, "All right, everybody, let's go sit in the yard. Everybody bring your Chromebooks or your laptops, and we're going to do working now in the yard," right? So can the network handle that, right? So ensuring we understand the school, see how they're configured, making sure we have the right equipment. So for example, access points that have high density. For all of our schools, we do what is called a heat map, where we walk the school. We make sure there's good coverage no matter where you are, right? So some of those little details make a big difference for a school and organization to make sure they don't have any problems, right?
Mm.
So that's that. And the way things worked in COVID, a lot of schools received government funding to get more devices for students. So every student now, where devices would stay home, now the student got to take a computer home, right? So how do we now protect that device? How do we ensure that people have for example, a good internet connection at home and a quality router, right? And we're talking about students, right? So how do we ensure that they have the right technology so they can, study from home, so to say? So while, go ahead, sorry.
Free for all, right? Once you go to everybody's homes, how do you even manage that? I can't imagine how you do that.
Yeah, so we don't go to anyone's home.
Right.
We don't do that part. But just to make sure we have a good device and we actually have some tools that help make connectivity easier, also security, now that device is leaving the perimeter of the school. So for example, a traditional firewall will no longer protect a device. So what tools can we have to ensure that the device itself is protected no matter where, right? So these are some of the things that we had in some of our corporate customers that ensured when somebody goes to a coffee shop or works or goes out of the country that they have protection on that device. And we brought that same technology into the student devices as well.
Hmm. And just last question around the education space
Yeah.
here. Since the students and the teachers and staff got used to bringing devices home during COVID, now that COVID's over and everybody's back in school, is everybody just back in school? You don't have to worry about, take-home devices anymore, or is there now a mix of situations that you have to support?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot more schools have adopted, the student can just take the device home,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It used to be that it was a computer center, right? If you needed to go use a computer, you would go, that's your classroom and that's where you use it. And then the
yeah. The
computers were
computer
brought
lab.
in. Yeah, computer lab, right? And then the computers they were brought into the classrooms, right? And now it's to a point where students it's a one-to-one. So every person gets their own device, they get to take it home. So we manage that. We manage everybody bringing in the devices. For example, for summer break and winter break, right? Everybody brings in their devices. So we go through and reset all of them, make sure they have updates, make sure they're clean. So the next year they can be given out again. So
You mentioned corporate partners. What kind of industry corporate do you work with? Like healthcare, finance, manufacturing, legal? Who do your other clients? What's the makeup like?
yeah, it's manufacturing, finance, and healthcare. And I would say the one that we work a lot with is healthcare.
Hmm.
There are some policies and restrictions and guidelines that we need to follow.
HIPAA compliance, right?
HIPAA compliance is definitely one of them, right? That we just we have some of our engineers come from the medical background that have medical IT history and background. So we brought people on staff that would be able to support that. And given, ensuring that we have the right policy in place so that people can't copy things like information, right? Patient information, protected health information, or personal identifiable information on devices that are not secure, right? Making sure everything stays there, making sure there's a policy that those things go in the right systems. This happens, right? A staff member comes and scans somebody's ID card and insurance card, and instead of uploading it into the EHR system, the electronic health record, okay, let me just save it on my computer first, and then I'll put it there. And next thing you know, they forget to delete it, right? Now that computer has a bunch of stuff on it it's not supposed to. So
Hmm.
working with, you know, our customers around that, ensuring that we have and we do have HIPAA assessments too, where we go through, we do it on site, we do it on the computer, we scan the network and all that. But just having the best practices there makes a big difference in keeping everyone safe. So
Absolutely. There's a lot to break apart there. I'd love to learn a little bit more. In terms of healthcare, are you working with hospitals and or clinics, dentist's office, vendors, teams? What does you mentioned staff, right? And you mentioned check-ins. I
yeah,
imagine physical office here.
yeah. So a lot of clinics.
Hmm.
So you know, facilities around surgery, facilities about rehabilitation, facilities around even some of the pet care facilities that we manage, um, which have their own needs. Typically, it's it's an organization, a healthcare organization, medical company that has maybe 5 to 10 locations, about 200 staff members, and they want to have more of a comprehensive IT feeling. And
Hmm.
things are interconnected. Doctors can go between offices and be connected, right? Everybody's under one IT policy. People just can't take their phones and join the network. And oh, look, you got access to the servers now, right? So all those things. Yeah.
What does the world of working within healthcare cybersecurity look like? Specifically with compliance, do you need to work with like SOC 2? We mentioned HIPAA earlier, and I imagine you're mainly working with US, so less so GDPR, right? Stuff like that. I'm curious what that landscape looks like for you all.
Yeah, so the way we've structured our cybersecurity offering, we have one specific for HIPAA, and we structure it in a way. It's really three areas, right? To make sure that it's a good fit. So if it's a medical company, we make sure that we have areas specific that protects them. Things, for example, like encryption on devices is mandatory for HIPAA, right? Things like data loss protection, right? Ensuring that there's a HIPAA policy in place where people can, like I said, put PHI and PII on their computers. So we look at fit, and then we also look at best practices. A lot of times when we come into an organization, they may not have the things that are necessary, right? So having, for example, a good firewall, having a good password policy, right? Those things matter. And then the third area that we really look at is risk. So what is a risk to an organization? And we get about, I would say about 60% of our customers do cybersecurity insurance, right? So they usually send us the insurance questionnaire on cybersecurity, so we help them fill it out. So what we've done is we really looked at the cybersecurity insurance companies and looked at how they identify risk, right? They tell us, right? Or organizations have to have these types of protections. So they know risk really well because they really pay out on it, right? Anytime someone's attacked, they're the ones that give money for forensic analysis, for staffing needs, whatever, what have you, right? So we really look at that aspect as well. So those three items really make a cybersecurity. And then we, based on fit, based on which environment it is. For school, for example, it's CIPA, it's the Children Internet Protection Act, making sure that students and children under the year of 13 can't access inappropriate websites, right? All of that stuff. So depending on the vertical, we make sure that there's a fit there.
Hmm. Here's a perhaps dumb question. Is there any healthcare facility, clinic, let's say, that does not need or use cyber insurance?
Does not need or use cyber insurance.
Or
There
do they
are
all, they must? Go ahead.
cybersecurity insurance. In order for organizations to work with us, we do recommend for them to have protection, right? We want to make sure they're protected. We want to make sure that we're able to help them as much as we can. It is not a requirement. HIPAA is a requirement,
Right.
right? If they don't follow HIPAA guidelines, then they will get fined, right? Cybersecurity is not a must, but we see it with the prevalence of hackers, of ransomware, of malware. We see more and more organizations that want to protect themselves. It's become the norm for doing business.
Yep.
You have business insurance, right? You have insurance that protect your people, your building. Cyber just falls under that as well. So, um, are there organizations that don't have it? I'm sure there are, right? But it makes sense, right?
Absolutely. So this sort of gets us to this this question area, this topic where, for your MSP, how do you sell your cybersecurity services? Do you use, say, in order for you to be qualified or continue to be qualified for cyber insurance, here's what you need. In order for you to continue to be qualified for HIPAA, to prevent fines, here's the services that you need. Here are the services that we provide. What's your sales process? Let's just take the healthcare example for now. What's your sales process?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of it, where we get to know the customer, we get to know the prospect, we get to know who that organization is, how do they function, what are their values, and from there we get a good understanding of what they want and what makes the most sense for them. So that's really where we start. And then, yeah, we just look at, see what they have, right? Do they have good protection? Do they have processes and procedures in place? If they don't, and we say, hey, you really should look into a way to, ensure that you have a good endpoint detection response tool, right? Your next gen AV. And
Hmm.
given, you have so many servers, to have 24/7 security monitoring, it's not that expensive, but it makes sense for your scenario. Just to give you some examples, right?
Hmm.
So it starts with a conversation, right? And understanding. And, when they have a cybersecurity insurance, when they have a policy, it makes that conversation a little bit easier
Yep.
because all the services that we provide match what they need from the cybersecurity insurance. So with that, it actually brings down their rate. Their insurance rate goes down with having more services because they're better protected, right? Um, but yeah, it's around having a conversation of understanding their needs and matching that. To be honest with you, like I was saying to you earlier, with kind of the onset of the hackers and so forth, it's become less of it's kind of a nice to have. It's more of a we need to have protection, right?
Hmm.
And the game is just so much more intense when it's a healthcare organization, because the fines are so high, right? If a hacker gets so much, protected health information, the medical organization can find a lot of money. So it becomes a no-brainer.
I mean, I think that's a great dynamic to play in, to be able to come in and say, "Hey, I know you care about this," and I so there's already a level of understanding between
Mhm.
you and the client when you first sit down and talk to each other. We talked a lot of MSPs, and I'm curious to hear your approach to this. A lot of MSPs also use cybersecurity risk assessments to basically get a checklist of things to talk about and essentially to sell their services, to close the deal, things like that too. Do you currently use risk assessments as part of your sales process, or do you use it as part of onboarding after the deal? What's your
Yeah, we
process?
typically, great question. We typically use it as part of our onboarding.
Hmm.
We've done it before. We run a like a risk assessment, a security assessment, and say, hey, here are all your holes, and we will help you, fill that gap, so to say. That works for some organizations, right? We've seen that where if there's a huge discrepancy, we can certainly do that. But, you know, we find it's we find it a better fit to describe here are the services you get with us, and here's why you need it more than, hey, we'll plug these holes, right? And then it just sometimes it can seem a little disgenuine. You know what I mean? If I just talk about, here are the things that your previous MSP didn't do,
Oh,
let
I see.
me help you with that.
I see. I see. So
Yeah,
a lot of times the situation is there's a previous MSP or maybe a previous IT person,
yeah,
and they're coming to you with these issues and problems, and you said something earlier which really piqued my interest. You basically were identifying the qualification, the criteria of who's a good match for you, what kind of client is a good match for you. But one of the
yeah.
last things you mentioned was values that you evaluate, right? You evaluate what kind of values does this client have. I was curious why you included that in there, and what do you mean by values?
Yeah, so not every organization is on the same trajectory,
Uh-huh.
on the same path. Let's say that when it comes to the organization, some organizations say that to us the most important thing is growth. Whatever you can do, help us grow. So we want to. The way they sort their value is different. Some people say it's growth. Some people say it's mitigating risk. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, we have as little risk as possible, right? So risk for us is very high. We do want to grow, but risk is really at the top of our list. And some people is cost. Some organizations say, we just want something that's cost, it's affordable, it's not so costly, right? So that's on their top of their list, right? So how an organization kind of sorts that it really allows us to provide better service, right? So we have three packages. If it's cost, we'll probably see if the more simpler package would be a good fit. When it's growth, we want to ensure that all of our tools that we set it up in a way that if they have more and more and more employees, that solution fits their needs, right? When it's risk, we want to make sure that all the things we can do to mitigate their risk, right? So not every company sorts the list the same. So we look at the values and make sure that our offering fits their needs.
That's a very, very interesting way to design your offering, and it makes a ton of sense too, because you're not only adapting to the business needs, you're adapting to the business priorities.
Yeah,
What do they help with the most? What do they care about the most? And you go and address that priority, and design your offering in a way that supports that priority. Um,
absolutely.
so, how did you guys always have that? Or how did that idea come about? Or I'm curious to dig a little into your experience as well. But yeah, where for a starting point, where does that come from? That how do you even think about a business model like that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's been about getting to know our customers, right?
Mm.
Understanding, what our customer really needs, right? We have some of our customers, they're like, you know what, a $10,000, $5,000 server is too much for us. We can't pay that. Well, maybe we want to look at cloud services, right? And then we have another customer that says, we wanted everything on premise and, make sure you get us the best and the greatest. That's $25,000, right? So we've had folks, some of our engineers that would be in meeting and they kept pushing, hey, you know what, you need to buy this best server. And they're like, no, 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 we don't want that. That's too much. Or the other way around, our engineers would design a solution that was it was very affordable, didn't cost a lot of money, right? And then, we had the conversation internally that said, well, we can't just give them the cheapest because they're not going to like that. They don't want a bunch of downtime. They're not going to wait for us to send back a switch or an access point. Let's just design the solution well so they don't have those problems. At the end of the day, that's what they're looking for. So it's from those initial conversations we've had internally where we said, why don't we come together and come up with some criteria so that way we know what the customer really wants. It doesn't have to be a big list, right? But something that defines really what the customer wants, what they truly are looking for. And it's about knowing the customer, right? After a conversation, a 10, 15-minute conversation, we get a pretty good understanding of where the customer is and what they're looking for, right?
Well, I love to hear from you because just hearing you explain all this, it makes a lot of sense. Definitely learning a lot during this experience. I would love to hear about your learnings over 20 years, right? 22-ish years of experience in the IT industry plus. And I'd love to understand what would you say are some of your most important career learnings that you've picked up along the way? And if there's an associating story with it too, that you
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Well, I started off as being a sysadmin, really getting into IT systems, configuring servers and, installing computers and networking them together and all that. So it was my passion. I loved computers growing up. So I really enjoyed that. And I had a chance to, manage some people. I got to be an IT manager. And then I was working for another company and they kind of had a blended role. They had not a director of IT, but they had a director of technology. So all of a sudden we had websites and IT systems and networks and there's some software involved that the organization, the company had developed in-house. So I got to see a little bit on that software development side too.
Hmm.
So what I decided to do is why don't I try a little bit more on this software engineering path. So at the time, I ended up moving to San Diego and I became CTO for an organization, did that for about 5 years, where I was managing developers. And now we're talking about project management and the ins and outs of, a Kanban board and customer expectation and delivering code,
Yep.
completely different from standing up a network infrastructure and group
Yes.
policies and access control and Active Directory. It's a completely different game. So
Yes.
I just wanted to get that knowledge first. So I did that for, like I said, for about 5 years. But my roots are really IT, right? It's really on the infrastructure side. It's really on the networking side. So I said, I think I need to go back to being a director of IT or, a CIO. And then I was offered this position at Fruth Group. I've been here for about 4 years now. So I've been really enjoying that, but it led me to understand software development and engineering and DevOps too. So what I would say is just don't be afraid to try something new. You never know what you may learn, right? So I had the pleasure and the fortune of trying different things and allowing all those things to come together and help me in my current journey.
How does the product development, product engineering experience does that contribute to your day-to-day today in IT in managed service for customers? Is there an aspect to that you brought into this?
Yeah. So there are a lot of um, yeah, the short answer, yes. One thing I love about the software development is the way they approach a problem. Um,
Mm,
so there's the software development goes into we're going to develop code that's going to be reviewed first, and then that's going to be given to the customer. And then the customer looks at it, plays with it, make sure it looks well, and then so that's a circle that goes, and then there's a circle that goes backwards, saying if anything is not working, that goes back to the reviewers. The reviewers look at it, and that goes back to software developers, right? And then so there's a circle that goes this way and a circle that goes that way. The feedback circle goes opposite, and then the work circle goes forward. So that's been really helpful for me to work with our IT customers too, to make sure there's some checks and balances there. So anytime
mm.
we work on a project or we do like a onboarding brand new for a customer, right? Everything does not go smoothly. There are issues, right? There are things that we didn't anticipate. There are things that the customer didn't tell us, right? So how do we ensure that not only do we deliver, but we listen to it, we learn from it, that information goes back to the engineers and that goes back to the customer, right? So that's been
Definitely.
helpful. Exactly, exactly. So it's been interesting. One thing that also that I've learned from software development is that the project management side of software developers and the whole, the technology industry when it comes to software engineering does project management very well.
Mm.
And on the IT side, um, it's okay. It's not as good as on the software
Yes.
side. So I wanted to make sure I go through my certifications and become a PMP, and I brought that over into the IT realm for our organization. That's really helped to understand where are we going, where's the trajectory, are we doing well, are we below the curve, right? Are we above the curve? Are we doing better than expected? So being able to track that, and there's some equations there, we can do some math against that. So having some actual numbers instead of saying, somebody's asking us how we're doing. Good.
Yeah.
But if I can show some numbers, right? We
Mhm.
actually have 11% over. There are some unknowns that are going to come up. So we're going to use that time to better know what's coming ahead to make sure we meet our deadlines or exceed our deadlines. So having some actual information that we can work with, that's been really great to bring that from the software side.
I really relate to that because my background is actually in PMing. My first job was
Yeah.
a program manager at Xbox, and
Awesome.
it's because I didn't know how to code. I was a terrible engineer, and the only thing I was really good at, I was very passionate in the technology. I just couldn't make it, but I was very passionate about helping out any other way and organizing, tracking, following up, precision questioning, planning and workarounds and unblocking, all that was fascinating to me and helping smooth out this engine so the engineers could work and do their job at highest efficiency.
Wow.
That was extremely exciting, extremely fun. Just being able to support in that role is a passion, still a passion of mine. And seeing things get delivered and solving problems on a human scale, letting the engineers solve problems on a code scale. I'm curious for yourself, what was that initial spark or passion going into IT? Rewind 20 plus years. I'm curious, yeah, what got you in and what's kept you continuing?
Yeah, I think the first time, so I grew up in Germany. I was in front of a DOS screen and just pushing buttons. I hit enter and it's like, oh, something else came up. Wow, let me
Oh,
try a
wow.
few things, right? So it's just a curiosity to be in front of a computer monitor and a keyboard and hit buttons and watch it do something. I felt like I'm in control. So that was really cool. I think what made me continue on my path, I think it's the same for everyone in a sense. It's that continuous challenge, right?
Mm.
Having the ability to say, I'm going to try to do something in my field, perhaps on a different level, on a higher level. So being challenged, whether I put myself in that challenge or, my boss or somebody, an executive said, hey, Sal, I want you to do this. I want you to jump in and figure this out or solve this. That getting those bigger problems and being put into a new role that's challenging, that just allowed me to continue on and not be stagnant, right? And really challenge myself to get better and be better.
Wow. It's kind of crazy for me sitting here to hear you talk about challenges because from the outside looking in, it looks like you're already at the top of your field. What more could you challenge yourself with? So I'm curious, as a last question, what's the next challenge for Sal? What's the next thing for you that you want to challenge, overcome, get to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Great question. I think I think I'll give you an example. So I saw I think this was a TikTok video, and this gal, she must have been in her 20s or early 20s. And she said that I see people with like the senior VP and so on their title, and you're managing people and you're doing these things. And how did you get there? I mean, I can't even fathom like how did you get from where I am here? I don't manage anyone. I'm just one person, right? And I want to know what you do, right? I want to get to where you are, right? So I look for those things. I look at ways for me to help others. There are folks that are just starting in their career and they may not know. I'm sure their path is going to be different from my path, but I can still describe to them how I got to where I've gotten, right? And they say that you never truly know something until you've learned how to teach it to someone else. So
Hmm.
this is my opportunity to teach others and help others get to a place where they really want to get to.
This shooting here in the dark, but in case there is something here, what would you like to teach our audience and leave us with?
Um, what I would say is at the end of the day, we're all people. So the more that we can connect with others and the more that we can help others understand technology, use technology. Uh, I think that I feel like as an IT person that I've done my job, right? I think a lot of times when there's a problem or something happens, we tend to blame the system for failing, or we tend to blame the way somebody talked to us. But I think we have the ability because we know a lot. IT people tend to be really smart, right? So connecting with others and communicating on what is it that I see, right? Because not everybody knows what I know. Some people get really concerned about things that they don't know that it may impact them. Is this a big problem? Is this a small problem? right? Well, how do I deal with that? Oh no, we're down. What does that mean? How long are we going to be down for, right? So a lot of that is just helping others and communicating properly and ensuring that, outside of the technology, I think the technology thing get really down to a T. A lot of us do. So how can we connect with others, right? To ensure that, they have the ability to love technology like we do, right? Being a good steward of the technology.
I uh, I really appreciate that because I fall into this trap. I work with technology a lot. I get stuck in my own world and I forget. I think everybody knows what I know, right? It's like, oh, it's oh, this is AI and this is how that works, and this is how networking and cybersecurity is, and I forget. And uh, I love how you described it, where if we can sort of see bring other people perhaps into our world and help them out and uh, uh, yeah, they can do things that we can't do and we can do things that they can't do, and I think that's amazing. So Sal, thank you so much for speaking with us today. The last question here is, who should reach out to you and what's the best way to reach you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. Um, Anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or they can email me. It's askkogadai@fruthgroup.com. So two ways of getting a hold of me.
Awesome. And links will be in the description. And last plug for us, folks, if you want to check out, demo the homepage risk assessment widget that converts website traffic to sales calls, or if you want to check out the automated risk assessment platform that can, greatly reduce the amount of time and automate the work, the manual work needed to run a risk assessment, come check us out at telivy.com. And if you know somebody who could benefit from it, you could refer us and get a $500 referral bonus. And that's it, everybody. Thank you again, Sal, for speaking with us today. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye. Thanks. And then I'll stop the recording.